All right, dear students, let's begin. So today, the topic of the lecture is technology in language testing. It's quite a big topic, and I won't maybe go into too much detail, but try to highlight the most important things that need to be taken into account that, well, specialists in teaching in linguistics should be aware of, because those are, so I will be talking mostly about things that are really important for the current state of language assessment. And first of all, there could have been probably much more technology in language testing than we can see now. However, as you might remember from our previous lectures, every language exam, not just language, any exam, any test, must follow the so-called VRIP principle. So any test should be valid, meaning test what it intends to test. Reliable, it means consistent, first of all, and consistent in content, consistent in approach, and consistent in the way it is administered, have positive impact on everybody, on test takers, on other stakeholders like, for example, teachers and managers of educational institutions. And finally, it must be practical, so something that you can really deliver, not something that costs more to run than to, for example, develop. And so therefore, I decided to start with reminding you about this principle, just because every new step towards introducing more technology into language testing is always, language assessment, is always considered from this point of view, how it follows the VRIP principle. And if not for that, maybe we would see much more, as I said, technical innovations in modern language testing. But at the end of the day, language testing is a business, as any other, well, educational business, and not just educational business, and definitely it follows a number of rules. Who are the customers for language assessment? Well, candidates, or sometimes their parents, if we talk about small children, then educational institutions who might be interested and might pay for testing of their students, employers, who sometimes, companies which sometimes, again, want to run a test to find out the proficiency level of their employees, and so on. And if we compare what customers expect, what are their first and foremost, the main needs in terms of quality and the arrangements around language testing, and what test developers are interested in. So we'll see the following picture. So definitely everybody is interested in having valid and reliable results, which means that the tests must be high quality, they must be good enough to be recognized by a number of important organizations like educational institutions, universities, sometimes ministries of education, and so on. Then there is a big, very little overlap with all the next points between the interests of customers, of candidates, and interests of test developers, because customers are interested really in being able to choose themselves, choose the date when they can sit an exam, while most, if we talk about international examinations, They are run according to a schedule, according to a time schedule, definitely better to say, which is given to them, which is prescribed, if you wish, by test developers. And this does not make everybody happy, because if you have one date a month for the exam which you need, and this date doesn't, suit you for whatever reason, this might be a problem. Venues, again, if there is only one exam center in your city and it is not very convenient for you to go to that particular place on the only date when your test is available, again, you are not quite satisfied. Was for test developers, this having, maybe a fixed schedule of exams is a good thing, because you know your deadlines, you know when and what you need to prepare, by what time, and so on and so forth. So they are not that much interested in giving that flexibility. Then definitely customers are interested in short registration deadlines, so that you do not have to register, say, in December and then only sit your exam in the first week of February, for example. You would like to be able to book your exam as soon as you are prepared to do that. And again, this is not, top priority for test developers. And finally, customers are definitely interested in getting the results of their exams as soon as possible, because again, they might have some practical reasons behind that. For example, admission, university admission, or something like submitting your documents for a visa, or I don't know, looking for a job where English proficiency or language proficiency is one of the requirements. So you need really to have them quick, even if you don't have any reason to expect or to want your candidates in a few days after you set the exam. Still, you want to know your results, simply because you made a lot of efforts preparing, taking the exam. It was, maybe you were stressed, maybe you must have been nervous, and so on. And so you would like to see the result. But again, test developers, this is not their top priority. But so this area of overlap between test developer and customer, each individual test developer and customer, is not that big, actually. But being a normal business, exam business is a highly competitive one. And if and when a candidate, a customer, has a choice of, say, 7, like in my picture, 7 exam developers, each of them offering something unique, something interesting, the high validity and reliability of their exams and their certificates, then definitely those 7 exam boards, they are in fierce competition, and therefore they are trying to offer something that customer really wants. Hence, all the changes, all the technology coming to language testing. And if you see, as you will see from the following lecture, from my next slides, most of the changes, most of the technology is centered around the interests of the candidates. They are definitely the priority. And as I was trying to show you, this is not maybe the real desire of test developers to do that, but they have to catch up with the competition. They have to be better. They have to offer the better service, and so on. And in a way, I will show you some examples how this happens in the game and the competition between big guys in the exams market. So next, let us see how technology manifests itself, how technology influences three main stages of the exam life cycle. And if we take a very simplified approach, then the key stages of the key periods of exam life cycle are test development, then definitely test delivery and test administration, and then actually marking and scoring and providing results, or as it is called in a more sophisticated way, response evaluation. Yeah, so you get some responses from your candidates and you are evaluating them. You are assessing the exam papers which you got from the students or candidates, and you provide some results. And so let us look at how this functions at each of the, how technology influences, what effect it has on every stage of the exam life cycle. And although, as I said, the major changes will be at stages 2 and 3, still there are some important things where technology really helps to develop modern tests. So what is happening at the test development stage? First of all, corpus linguistics. Definitely you, as linguists, you know what that is. Yes, this is, those corpora are huge databases of language. Any language we have. In the UK, for example, this is so-called British National Corpus, which has enormous number of entries from both spoken and written language. And what does it do for us? What do those corpora, how do they help in test development? And this is technology, definitely, because this is a database, right? So first of all, it helps to identify so-called, again, we came across this abbreviation TLU, target language use domains. It means if we want to test a non-native speaker at a certain level, for example, at a B2 level, we need to understand very well what he is able to produce, what we can expect from him, and what we can demand from him or her at this particular level. And in this respect, and what do native speakers do? Maybe not at this level because they tend to be higher than that. But anyway, if they are talking about something, if they are performing any communicative function, how do they do it? What do they say? Which grammar do they use? Which vocabulary items do they pick up? And so on. So basically, this is about target language use, what people who are native speakers usually do, usually say, and how do they say it, how do they express this, how do they perform this function when they use their native language. And plus, there are a number of so-called learner corpora. So mostly not just exam boards, but sometimes even publishers, Longman Pearson, for example, and Cambridge Assessment, of course, as an exam board, they are putting together, again, maybe smaller databases than British National Corpus. But anyway, so-called learner corpora. So this is the language of those who are learners of English, for whom English is a well, maybe a second language, but in most cases, just a foreign language. And by analyzing this learner corpora, you can understand again what to expect at a certain level, what you need to be, what you should be able to say, and how you should be able to say, express something at A2 level, at B1 level, and so on. And on the basis of those corpora, there are a number of resources which are a very important reference material and also a source, excuse me, of materials for developing tests, like we used with you during our lessons, during our seminars, English profile. As you remember, grammar and vocabulary are sorted by particular Common European Framework level. And so corpus linguistics, therefore, really contributes a lot. And this is, again, just sorry for repetition, but this is, again, about technology. It's not just, you know, a huge pile of papers with words. It's a database, which is a live database. So you can really play with it. And I had a chance once in my life to have a look at Longman database, Longman corpus. That was really fascinating because you can do lots of things with that. You can pick up a word and see how often it is used in combination with, say, if there's a noun, for example, with adjectives, which adjectives are most commonly used with it. What are the typical contexts when this word is used by native speakers? So this is really, you know, a very, very interesting thing to have a look at. And also, as I say, this is important for test development. Then another piece of technology that is widely used by all exam boards is so-called pre-testing. And this has to do with something, with a very sophisticated thing called item response theory. So what is that? It is collecting big amounts of statistical data on how test items, so test tasks, right? How they function, how different groups of candidates, big groups of candidates cope with it. And this is the way to check whether a new item, whether a new task is of the same level of difficulty and is of the same level of, in terms of language, as something that you used before. And this is about exam validity again, and about reliability, because exam task, any test task, need to be at the same level of difficulty than any previous one and any, you know, later one. On the basis of this item response theory, all exam boards, they run pre-tests. What is it? First of all, everybody, or the main asset of any exam board is so-called item bank. It's, again, a huge database, a huge source, a huge, how to say it, like, you know, virtual box where you put all exam tasks that you develop. And when you are putting together a pre-test, you take new ones which are not yet included into your item bank, which has been just written by your item writer, by somebody who is developing exam tasks. And you want actually to check whether it is at the same level as previously used items from your bank. And so what you do, you put together a pretest containing new, in each part, there would be new tasks and one so-called anchor task, which has worked well previously. And this anchor task is your main, how to say it, you measure everything else against this anchor task. And this is, again, something that is done through very difficult technology. Those are very difficult, mathematical models. There are difficult ways of measuring the performance of new tasks against this anchor one. And this is the way how item banks are created. So only after you pre-tested a number of new items, you can put it into the item bank and you can use it in the real test with real candidates. And pre-tests, usually they are offered free to just whoever wants them. But definitely the condition is that a group of students needs to be put into the situation very similar to what happens at the real exam. So they need to be supervised, of course, they need to be not to be using, they can't be using any, I don't know, dictionaries, online support or whatever. And this is pretty much everything which concerns technology in test development. And this is specialist, and this doesn't really, isn't really a part of the experience of real exam takers. And the major part of the job is still done by humans who are writing these items, who are collecting data for the language corpora and handling them and analyzing them and so on. Whereas if we look at the next stage of the exam or an exam life cycle, we will see a much higher level of impact of technology on the test, on how tests are taken. And there is a term, computer-assisted language testing. This is about everything, all stages of the life cycle, but mostly, to be honest, about test delivery. And so this abbreviation CALT, CALT, computer-assisted language testing, you will see on my next slide, which shows you the evolution of computer-assisted language testing. So what was the first step? The first step was computer-based testing. It was very important at, say, I think it appeared somewhere in mid-1990s, when it was offered as an alternative to so-called pen and paper or pencil and paper test. What does it offer? How it is run? So you do not need internet connection for that. So online testing and computer-based testing are two very different things. For example, your institution or the exam center where you go, they just download the test task from given, somehow sent to them, given to them. Sometimes at the beginning it was on the CD discs, for example. So you get a CD disc, you insert it to your computer's disk reader or whatever, and then you give a chance to candidate to sit at this computer and to do the test, to go through the whole test. However, something like speaking will be still face-to-face, but listening, reading, writing can be taken in a computer-based mode. What are the advantages? Well, first of all, this gives candidates a much faster result, because you avoid the whole stage of collecting the paper-based answer sheets, sealing them into envelopes and couriering those envelopes by, I don't know, UPS or DHL somewhere to the UK, which takes maybe not a week, but still a number of days. And then in the UK, those paper answer sheets will be received, will be unpacked, and will be scanned. Again, this takes some extra time, whereas with computer-based testing, you just send the answers of candidates by email, for example, in a much faster manner. But at the end of the day, this doesn't change the nature of the test itself, because it is all the same test that you had on the paper, you would have had on paper, the same you are doing in on using the keyboard and looking at the computer screen. The next step forward was something that is called computer-based adaptive testing. And we'll go one slide ahead to have a look at what that is. So first of all, computer-based, adaptive computer-based testing, it fits only the tests which are identifying your level. Because if you are within one level, if you are sitting at B1 test, for example, it doesn't need to be adaptive. You just go through the range of B1 level tasks, and that's all. But if you need not just to get a result, but or a certificate in some cases, but you do not really know what level you are, then computer adaptive testing is something that will, will be very fit for the purpose. So what does computer testing do? Adaptive testing, excuse me. So at the beginning, this will give every candidate a task somewhere, A2 maybe, A2/B1 task, which is somewhere in the middle of the Common European Framework. And then it all depends on the quality of the answers. If you succeed with task number 1, so the task number 2 will be slightly higher, as you see in this graph. Then this particular candidate, our imaginary candidate, got to B1 level, but failed the B1 level task. And he or she was taken back. The next task he got was again from A2 level. But in this case, our candidate was successful, so he was given a higher level B1 test, then again higher B1, then B2, no, he didn't cope with B2, then again back to B1, and since the majority of his answers, so 3 answers out of 4 at B1 level were successful, so his actual or her actual level is B1. And this technology is very widely used in all kinds of placement tests. However, not only. Sometimes it is used, as I will show a little bit later, in more important kind of tests. And then after computer-based adaptive testing, or it can now be also online based adaptive testing, got established well, and it was probably somewhat like 15 years ago, early noughties maybe, or very late 90s, but in language testing rather early noughties. Then the next step, which is the final one for today, was online testing. When you do not sit at the computer with preloaded materials, but actually everything is taking place while you do that. And also, although, well, computer-based adaptive testing, it also is connected somehow to the has some choice of materials to get from the item bank and offer you, but online testing is connected directly with the bank of tasks, the item bank. And we'll talk a little bit in more detail a little bit later about online testing. So now, if we look at the existing online tests, what do we have? There are more actually, but probably the tests which are either the most popular ones or are produced by the most important players in the market, like Cambridge, for example, they are presented here. So Cambridge has a test which is called LinguaSkill, and it is so-called low stakes because it doesn't give you a certificate. It's not an exam, it is a test. It only gives you the statement of result, which is important, of course, but this is not something you can, use for university admission or anything. LinguaSkill is first of all for example, students who are already learning English and they need to be tested in terms of their progress, for example, or in companies. Companies are using that with their employees quite a lot. It is adaptive. And also, sorry, one more very important thing. Definitely adaptive testing can only be for receptive skills. It's listening and reading. Writing and speaking, they are what they are. Here you can't adapt. Really, in writing, for instance, you give person a topic and then whatever he or she produces, this is what he can produce. Right. So it is adaptive and listening listening and reading, and it can taken, because it's not an exam, it can be taken from any venue. There are some prescriptions though that which candidates should follow, but there is no very strict control here. But the recommendation is still for LinguaSkill to go to the test center and to sit it there so that your results are really, trustworthy and reliable, because at home, God knows who will be, who and what can be helping you. Then there is a very interesting, very high stakes exam called Pearson Test of English Academic. Really no state-of-the-art exam in many ways. It is not adaptive because, again, if you remember, there is this is an admission test like IELTS. And being an admission test, university admission test, it again looks at the desirable level of language proficiency to be able to study at any university in an English language program with English as the language of tuition. And therefore, it is somewhere at, well, strong C1 level. And this is the norm. So it is norm referenced, not criterion referenced. So it is not adaptive because either you are there or you are not there, and it will give you a lower result, but without really much information about what this means. And it can only be taken from a test center, and these test centers, they are very well protected with lots of surveillance equipment, with eye scan and palm scan and whatnot. And then two products of a language cert. Language cert is an interesting story in this case because this company is owned by a much bigger, it is part of a group of companies called PeopleCert. And PeopleCert had the online testing technology for their exams in business and IT long ago. And they also applied it to languages, to English in particular. And there are two options with language cert. First, there is language cert test of English, which is not, as we call it, level agnostic. So it is not, again, connected to a specific level of Common European Framework. It works like this. So it identifies your level in an adaptive way. So it is adaptive. But at the same time, it gives you a certificate, not just a statement of results. So it is high stakes as opposed to LinguaSkill, for example. And it can be taken anywhere, for example, from home. How this happens, I will tell you a little bit later. And Language Cert also has Common European Framework aligned exams, and at levels from A2 to C2. So except for A1, it can be taken also in online mode. And it also is a high stakes exam. Certificates are recognized by lots of universities and governments. It is not adaptive because it is connected to a certain level. It doesn't need to be, because if you are claiming by registering to a C2 exam that you have a C2 exam, so you are just asking basically to confirm that, right? You are not asking to find you somewhere along the Common European Framework. And again, it can be taken from anywhere, from home, for instance. What are the key threats to such high technology tests being valid and reliable? So first of all, this is cheating. And when a test is taken outside of test centers whose primary role is not just to arrange the exams, but to make sure that the exam is absolutely secure. So nobody's cheating, nobody's trying to use any kind of support. So the key sources of cheating in online exams are, as you may imagine, either trying to use help from another person if you are taking, again, this exam outside of the test center. Who knows, maybe it was a real case, by the way, because if you remember, I talked about LinguaSkill test, this one, Cambridge, and it was, and I believe still being used by the biggest Russian bank, Sberbank, who have the system of language proficiency for different stages of their management. For example, if you are head of the regional bank, you need to be at, I don't know, B2 level. I don't remember, honestly. And when they were trying to test such people sitting somewhere far away from Moscow with the online LinguaSkill, in listening, for example, they heard some strange voices. There was definitely somebody, because, well, it is a big boss, and there was somebody, maybe his English teacher, who was sitting somewhere close to him and giving him advice, so what to say, what to write, was whispering into his ear at the spoken part and so on. So help from another person is really, it happens in the real life. And the second thing which any candidate can use to help him or her to cope with the exam more successfully is to use any of the computer programs, applications, internet sites, other than the test itself. Like you go to the Google Translate, or you go to the, I don't know, some grammar page with English grammar, and to look up the past forms of irregular verbs, whatever. So what can be done about that? What are the potential solutions here? The potential solutions are proctoring. So most probably you are familiar with this term. Proctor, just to reiterate, to remind you maybe, proctor is somebody who is an administrator, who is making sure that everything, your exam is secure and it is free of any cheating attempts. And proctoring can take several forms. So the easiest form of proctoring is recorded. And in the last year, during the lockdown, during the pandemic, and maybe, who knows, in some countries, in many countries this year as well, this is something that many people running all kinds of tests will be using. Even if we do not speak about high stakes exams, about international exams, if we just take, for example, the end of the course test, to make sure that students answer the questions fairly without any support. So you ask them all to switch on their cameras, and somebody somewhere, one of the teachers or one of the department staff is sitting and watching them through their cameras. Not through their cameras, on his or her screen, while they have their cameras switched on. Such things normally are recorded in the easiest way. Yes, it is to record, to ask the student to record him or her, like I'm recording this lecture myself at the moment. And then somebody would watch these videos at the university, for instance, or whoever else, you know, the employer, if he or she wants, this organization wants to test its employees, its staff, and make sure that nothing suspicious was happening during the exam. But this is not very reliable, because you cannot really make sure that everything, that the desk is clear, that there, you just switch on the camera, you can see the face, maybe you can see the part of the of the body, but not everything. And if definitely it is a signal if somebody is leaning, or somebody is looking somewhere, or somebody is putting his her hand somewhere. But this can be, again, you know, this can be explained by some natural reasons, not necessarily something really, you know, connected with teaching. And therefore, and plus definitely watching through all these recorded sessions is a very tedious job, because definitely you get tired maybe when you are watching the third, the fourth, the fifth exam. And if there are several, you know, recordings on your screen and you are trying to look at different people, then you may lose something. And again, this is not 100% reliable. The next thing is live online proctoring. And I'm sorry, because the first example I was trying to give you was live online. It's when somebody, a member of staff, faculty staff, is sitting somewhere and has everybody on his or her screen and tries to identify again some misbehavior, exam misbehavior, let's call it like that. This is also not a very reliable thing, again, because if it is just a Zoom, for example, Zoom gives you a very poor picture, a very small picture of what is happening. If you have lots of people on your screen, again, you see only faces, and faces do not seem to be doing anything, you know, wrong, and you can't hear what is happening there. So such, you know, I would say homemade live online proctoring is much better than nothing, but still it is not 100% reliable. What is, though, is, although I will show you example from Language Cert how they do that, and this is professional, this is much more reliable than whatever you can do, you know, inside the faculty or inside a university or inside the company. This is much better and much more trustworthy. And finally, there is so-called, excuse me, there is a misprint here, not advances, but advanced automated proctoring, which means that you do not need a human. And honestly, this is not used in any language tests. This comes from professional qualifications, and I believe one day it will be in language testing as well, but just for your reference, when it finally, you know, arrives to language assessment, you would probably remember me mentioning this. What is advanced automated? It means that there is a sort of soft which connects you with the computer, with the system of the exam provider. And this soft watches you, and this soft actually understands when you are trying to do something wrong, when you are tilting your head as if looking at something, when there are some noises which shouldn't be there. So like two people talking, or maybe, you know, something else happening, or maybe, you know, somebody flipping through the pages and so on. So advanced automated is the highest level of possible proctoring technology, but as I said, this is not that much widely used so far, especially, and not used at all at language testing. And the second thing, which is definitely the part of advanced automated, but is used in many cases by professional live online proctoring, is when at the same time you block the unwanted computer use. It means that, for example, candidate has to download a program which will block all applications, all screens on his or her computer, apart from the test itself. And in this situation, you can at least be 100% sure that you do not, the tested student, the candidate, will not be able to use something in his or her computer apart from the actual task he or she is going through. I must have missed one slide here. All right, so we'll talk about that, and then I will show you a picture of how this looks with online live proctoring. And finally, what happens with response assessment? So basically with checking, marking, and scoring candidates' answers or responses. Again, we can look here at the evolution of this. Actually, automated assessment for reception, for receptive skills, has a very long history. And the first attempts were made late 1930s, when computers were still, you know, a novelty, but 1940s maybe rather, so 30s too early maybe for that. When computers, you know, occupied the whole building, but one of the universities, American universities, Berkeley, if I'm not mistaken, they ran tests in biology just using these specific cards, which then were supplied. So you had to mark, just tick the correct answer. And then a certain, form with a piece of paper, rather to say, or a paper card with holes in the places where ticks should be on were put over your answer. And then if in every hole, in every, circle, hole, round hole on this checking, let's say so, piece of paper, through it you could see the tick, then it was the correct answer. If there was nothing in the next hole, then it means that you ticked something that wasn't the correct answer. And it was done by these ancient, computers, which were actually, how to say it, actually applying those cards with holes on the answers, special answer cards given by students. So it was just recognizing which answer is marked. If you can't see the tick through the hole, then this is the wrong answer. The next step was auto marking of receptive skills tests. For example, now all receptive skills tests are marked by computers. So if it is a paper-based test, then all answer sheets are scanned and fed to the machine, and the machine looks whether the answer is correct or not correct. I will show you a little bit later how this can function. And the latest stage of automated assessment is automated assessment of productive skills. This is the most unbelievable, basically, technology used currently in language testing. So what about computer marking of so-called receptive skills tests? For example, this can be a question in reading or in listening part, and the correct answer when something happened. And something happened on the 1st of September, 1999. So in order for the machine to be able, for the computer to be able to recognize the correct answers, you need to feed the computer all the correct versions of how the 1st of September 1999 can be written, because there is no one single standard of how to write the date. It can be first ST of September, it can be the 1st of September, then comma 1999, it can be September 1st, comma 1999, it can be the European standard 0109 1999, it can be the American standard 09/01/1999, and some more. So when teaching your computer system to mark such tests, you really have to think of all the possible options. Or, for example, if there is an address that you need to get from the listening test, and this is the correct answer, again, you can spell the whole word street, say High Street. You can say, you can use the abbreviation, the short form as ST, for example, and so on. Again, in each case, when there could be a variety of the ways how the correct answer can be expressed, you need to be absolutely, and this is again about validity and about reliability of the test and about the fairness of the test. You need to make sure that every candidate who gave the correct answer, but expressed it slightly differently, will get, you know, the point, his correct answer will be then recognized, right? But in this case, what teachers preparing for exams always tell students that, well, look, the computer doesn't have any options of misspelling. For example, if you write September with A instead of E in the first syllable, it will be the mistake, and this will be an incorrect answer. And this is not 100% fair, because if we talk about exam validity, you remember, we need to check, we need to test what we really promise to be testing. And if we promise to be testing listening, then spelling has no relation to that. But this is something that we cannot avoid, because the options of misspelling one single word are huge. And it is impossible really to provide to the computer, to the system, all the options of potentially, you know, misspelling of every single word. Right. And finally, what about automated assessment of productive skills? This is the cutting edge technology, of course. It is used at the moment in full only by Pearson Test of English academic. Other exam boards, they are approaching this stage, but Pearson started before everybody else, earlier than anybody else, and therefore they are using it quite well, exceptionally well, I would say. So how this is done? First of all, it uses the artificial intelligence technology, and this artificial intelligence, this brain, if you wish, is provided with thousands and thousands of sample answers. For example, writing tasks, and decisions made by human examiners. For instance, like we studied the criteria of assessing writing, yes, so human examiners using this criteria make their decisions. So this is, for example, band 4 for communicative achievement, and this is band 3 for grammar and vocabulary, like this. And so the artificial intelligence somehow processes everything, and starts understanding how it works. And then when it gets a new piece of writing from a candidate, it compares it with all the samples he has and all the decisions made by human examiners, human markers that it has in its huge memory. And by means of this comparison, by means of this matching, I would say, it makes a decision that, well, this, for example, piece of writing, this essay needs to be given 2 for communicative achievement, 3 for language, and for example, 4 for text organization. And this is not something which is, it keeps learning. I mean, the system keeps learning because sometimes the decisions of the artificial intelligence is double checked by the humans. And if humans see that there is something wrong, that probably the artificial intelligence was too indulgent or vice versa, too strict upon a candidate, then actually it needs to have some, you know, adjustment. Partly it is, as I said, it is completely used by Pearson Test of English Academic. TOEFL exam is approaching this. So they actually use artificial, they are still, feeding this artificial intelligence. It doesn't have enough information to work independently. So they first give to the system the chance to assess a piece of writing, for example. And then the human examiner is assessing it as well. And the human decision, the decision of the human examiner prevails. And Cambridge's LinguaSkill is doing the same now. It has also been learning. It's also been taught, not been learning, excuse me. It's also been taught how to do it independently. And Pearson Test of English Academic is advanced at the moment, as I said, and they say, I don't know what percentages it is for other commissions, exam boards, but it is said to demonstrate, as you see, 99.8% agreement with human raters, which is a very good result. And in some cases, as at least specialists from Pearson say, its judgment is even more trustworthy than those of humans. Still, there are lots of discussions about using or not using automated assessment of productive skills. Nobody already discusses the use and the benefits of automated assessment in receptive skills, but as to productive skills, there are still discussions. What are the advantages? First of all, definitely it's completely impartial, because even if you do not see the candidate who is speaking, even if you are just listening to the recording, maybe you might not like the tone of the voice. And it will somehow, although it is not a very common situation, it is a very rare situation, but every human has its, sentiments, and many of human decisions are really influenced by the emotions. Yes, so you might give a, mark lower than this speaking task deserves. And definitely automated assessment and artificial intelligence, it doesn't get sick, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't go on vacation, it doesn't have, rows with children or spouses in the morning, which then influences its, mood and its productivity. It consumes as many pieces of writing or speaking as you feed to it. So definitely it provides impartial and fast results. What are the objections? They are also a little bit serious, because if there is something, because I said that actually, if it has an essay, for example, if it gets the artificial intelligence, if it gets the essay, so it starts comparing it with all the similar, for example, essays using similar expressions, using the similar structure that it has in its huge memory. But what if this is a very good piece of writing, but it is but it uses some non-standard approaches? If there are some traces, some areas of creativity within this particular essay, this means that artificial intelligence will not find anything of the kind in its memory, and it will discard it, or it will undergrade it, it will undervalue it. And for example, if you wish to use a quotation from Shakespeare, and you use the language, the Shakespearean language of the early 17th century, definitely modern artificial intelligence will not recognize the language, and it will discard it, saying that, well, this piece of writing is full of strange words which do not exist. So actually, this is good only for, and the same actually applies to speaking. As soon as you try to go away to abandon very standardized types of answers, you might be in trouble and you might get not the result that you deserve. And this is something that is really the hugest, maybe, piece of criticism in relation to automated assessment of productive skills. And at this stage, I have to ask for your permission to stop screen sharing. I just will keep you for 2 more minutes, maybe, because I need to find, excuse me, I need to find the slide which I wanted to show you. Just a second, I will I will get it. What I'm trying to find now is how online proctored exams are delivered, and what does it look like for a candidate, and what does the proctor see. There is just one single slide I need, and find it in my previous presentations. Okay, here we go. Just a moment, let me share again. Right, so as I said, LanguageCert probably is the only exam board at the moment which issues the same kind of certificates for exams which were taken at the exam center and the exams which were taken at home, due to its system of online proctoring. So what is happening here? Sorry, what are you doing? What is happening here? In the left-hand side of the screen on the black background, you can see what the proctor sees of the candidates during the written exam, listening, reading, writing. So the faces are blurred, but of course the proctor sees everybody quite distinctly. So the system shows you, first of all, the proctor can have a full view of the candidate's room through the candidate's camera. And the first thing that the proctor asks you to do is to turn 360 degrees around your room with your camera or with your laptop, if you are using a laptop, so that nobody else apart from you is in the room, to make sure. Then he or she asks you to show your desk, for example, and there shouldn't be anything, any even slightest, smallest pieces of paper or anything. And when the exam starts, so he or she, the proctor, sees where you are in the exam, those white screenshots which you see, and also it sees what is happening. Usually, classically, there are about up to 30 people that can be supervised by one proctor at a time, but LanguageCert gives the maximum of 8, I believe, to these proctors, just because I don't know, this is a high stakes exam and you really need to be attentive. And the system also gives to the proctor some warnings. For example, caution, this yellow head that you can see. So somebody is tilting the head and it might look suspicious. And in the right-hand side of the screen, you can see what is happening during the spoken exams. Spoken exams are also run in an online mode. And here your proctor is your, not just a technical somebody, but this is your oral examiner. If you remember, we watched the bits and pieces from language cert exams, but it was a test center exam with the nice gentleman being an interlocutor and various, Hungarian girls being the candidates. And in this case, so this is a lady who is the proctor, there is a candidate, and the lady is asking all those questions from the interlocutor's brief. The exam is recorded, and the interlocutor, as I explained to you, doesn't mark it. He or she only provides or only elicits language from the candidate by means of asking the most suitable questions. So this is everything I really want to tell you today. Do you have any questions?
No, thank
No.
you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you very much for rescheduling. I will save the recording, and those colleagues who were not able to join us will be able to then watch. And I will see you at our usual time and our usual place on Saturday, and we'll have a seminar on following up from the lecture about classroom assessment. All right? Okay. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening. See you on
Thank
Saturday.
you so much, Dr. Rana.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. You too.